Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have another edition of All My Books. This is a series that I do where I talk about all of my books from a particular author or a particular series or a particular subgenre, and I've done these for like Terry Brooks and all of his books, and for Timothy Zahn and for Kevin Anderson. I've done in all my books for my Star Trek books. I've done all my books for my Star Wars collections and stuff like that. Today I'm going to do an all my books for self and indie published books. I don't put quite the emphasis on indie publishing that some of my fellow YouTubers do. It's not that I hate indie publishing, it's just not the type of thing I'm well read in or particularly have put my focus in. But I've been reading a little bit, especially recently, of indie books, and so I've decided to go ahead and spotlight some of the indie books that I have read and owned, and some of the ones that I have on my TBR. I have 19 books to talk about, and it would have been a clean 20, but I had one book that is like an out of print book that a friend of mine created, and he's like, don't show that in public, so I'm not. So it's 19 books, and that I'll be showing today. I have read 15 of them. So that means that there's just 4 that I have not read of the 19. So those 4, you can expect that they'll be read sometime, probably this year sometime. So let's get into all my books, indie self-pub. So the first books I'll talk about are from a fellow YouTuber named Daniel Green. Daniel is probably the most well-known book reviewer, especially in the fantasy sci-fi space, and he wrote the book Breach of Peace, which came out, I think, back in 2021, and this is basically a novella. And I read this, I don't know if it was release day, but I read it the day that I was able to get it at my bookstore. My bookstore did not order self-pub books unless the author was coming to speak at the bookstore, but I worked there. And so I said to the manager, hey, there's books coming out. Can I order it through you guys instead of Amazon? And we looked, and sure enough, we could. And so they said, only 1 copy for you. So I got it. I would have gotten more copies for the store, but I don't think anyone would have bought them. Anyway, I got Breach of Peace. I read it in like one day. It was a really short book. It's only like 130 pages, so it's a really short novella and pretty large print. But it's a fun read. I think I gave it like a 7 out of 10. I read this just before I started the YouTube channel, so there's no review of it on the channel. But I enjoyed it. I also read his full-length novel that he wrote, Rebel's Creed, which was a self-pub, which he also wrote in late 2021. I actually have a review of this one out on the channel, and so I do recommend this book. And I did quite enjoy it, and I think that Daniel Green is proving that he is just a great potential for the future. I gave it also a 7 out of 10. Then I also have a book that was sent to me by the author, All Hail the Carrion King by Thomas Godfrey. This is very much a dark fantasy book, and I wrote a really long, detailed review of it and made a video for the YouTube channel, and I was very thankful that Thomas sent me the book to review. I think I gave it like a 6 out of 10. It was interesting. Not my style, but interesting. I think other people will enjoy it more than I did. And then, I'm going to skip that one for just a second. I have the Low Country trilogy by Morgan Shank. Morgan's a friend of mine. Actually, I know his family through college. And Morgan is a terrific author. These are my favorite self-pub books that I've read. You have a Low Country, you have a sequel, A Savage Country, and A Silent Country. Books 1 and 2 I actually read in their ebook form and then went out and bought the physical copy because I enjoyed them that much. And I think that Morgan's that good of an author. He's one of the most consistent authors I've ever read. This one is a Western with some fantasy trappings. This one is kind of a mixture of both. And then the third book, A Silent Country, actually I'm in the acknowledgments of this one. It's pretty cool. This one is a straight up fantasy with a few trappings of Western. So it kind of changes over time. But I really loved this trilogy. It's really consistent. If you want a short, quick fantasy trilogy to read that's not part of the major publishers, I recommend this one. This one's a good, each book, is only about 270 pages, so they're not long, but it's totally worth it in my opinion. And he has a new book coming out soon, or it may already be out. Anyway, I'll be reading that as well. I also want to point out 2 books, also another high school and college connection to this author. I knew their family. This author, she writes in multiple genres. Her name's Ari Ryder. She also worked at a Barnes & Noble near where I lived at. And so she wrote Murder at the Harvey House, which is a 1920s mystery type book. And then she also wrote a novel, Netherworld. And I thought both books were good, but I thought Murder at the Harvey House was superb. This is like Agatha Christie in all but name. I thought that this is how you write. Like, this is the Americanized Agatha Christie. I thought this was golden. It absolutely gets like the historical fiction feel of the 1920s. I think that Ari Ryder has amazing potential. I know she's been talking about doing a sequel. I hope she does, because it's fantastic. If she does one, I will buy it, because it was that good. Netherworld was also a great read. I'm curious to see if she does a sequel for that as well. I also have books from David Vissers. David was the first ever author to send me his books. He did them in impeccable packaging. I mean, he just did amazing with them. So he wrote the book When Darkness Prevails and the book Origins of Underas. When Darkness Prevails is like an apocalyptic sci-fi book, and also kind of elements of YA in there. And actually, you can't get these books anymore because he published them and then he took them off of Amazon where he was publishing them and he reworked them and he feels he can make them better. And so they're out in a new format now. And I don't know what formats it's in. I think it's in hardcover now. And his new book is out now. And so it's in reworking of this book. I think the new book is called Darkness in a Sea of Stars. Anyway, so that's that one's out, and then Origins of Wunderras is his kind of fantasy short stories that he wrote, which were interesting. So don't look up these titles for that author. Just look up the author's name on Amazon if you want to look up his works. He's really fascinating. Then I want to talk about the one that's probably the most famous of all of these, and that's Theft of Fire. Theft of Fire is making the rounds in reviews, and the author's wife corrected me on that, and I was like, no, they're still making the rounds. Theft of Fire, a lot of people on Twitter and Goodreads are talking about it, and I know Bibliotheory reviewed it, and I reviewed it, and I know that John Douglas is going to read it and review it, so it's starting to make headway. And this book is a science fiction novel, really character focused, really focusing on the themes and the characters involved, and it's very interesting. And this one, Devin, of course, was very kind. He and his wife sent it to me. So those are some of those. Now, this next 4 books are in an interesting place because technically a publisher published them, but it's not a well-known publisher, or at least not a big publisher. It's not like one of the big 5. This was kind of an independent publisher, which I actually do think we need to bump up. To me, the indie publishing space should not just be about the self-pub. It should be about building up other publishers as well, which is why I highlight places like Bain, which technically works with the Big 5, and why I highlight Ethan Books and others like that. And this is B&H Books, which is a Christian publisher, but B&H Books published this 4-book series by Jeff Struker and Alton Gansky. This is the first book is titled Certain Jeopardy. The second book is titled Blaze of Glory. The third book is titled Fallen Angel. And the fourth book is Hide and Seek. This series is about Army Rangers, and it is about different missions that they're sent on, and it's a fiction series, but it's, each book is a separate individual book, and they have, different goals with each book, and I thought they were all very interesting. Actually, this is a series where literally every book got better. I thought the first book was okay, and I thought the second book was pretty entertaining. I thought the third book was also very good, and I thought the fourth book was great. The fourth book, this book, I loved this book. I thought this was a great book, but I don't think that it'll matter quite as much to you if you haven't read the first 3. But they're still standalone generally, but there's some character arcs and stuff because some of the characters are in the other ones. But I loved reading these series. It's so funny. The writer, Jeff Struker, who wrote this series, he was in the military during the time of Black Hawk Down, and actually he's in the movie Black Hawk Down. His character is Jeff Struker. And then he also wrote a nonfiction book that I don't remember the title of. And then he went and became a pastor at my church, which is really, really funny. In my area, it is very common for the local church pastors to be former military because there's a lot of former military in my area. Let me tell you, there's a lot of retired military. Anyway, so this series I had a blast reading, and so it is technically a publisher that published this series, but it's a small, tiny indie publisher, so that's why. And I'm supposed to be putting these over here. I'm not following my rule. I said I was going to do it over here now, and instead I'm doing it over there. Anyway, let's go to the ones I haven't read. These are the 4 books that are indie self-pub books that I just haven't read yet. But I intend to get to all of these eventually. I'm trying to get to them in the order that I either purchased them or were sent to me, if they were sent to me. So I do have here Side Hustle Volume 1 by Jason Cordova. This is a short story collection from Jason that he self-published, and it has just some great cover art. I mean, that's not my style normally, but man, that catching, and that really caught my eye and made me interested. And Jason, I interviewed him at DragonCon last year. Just look up Jason Cordova and my name and you'll find my interview. You'll also find some of my other interviews with some of the other people. But I loved getting to interview Jason, and he's a really nice guy. And he's also really fun on Twitter. He's a lot of fun on Twitter. So he's known as the lowly mail clerk at Bain. And so this short story is beefy. There's like 700 pages here, but I'm excited to get to it eventually. Speaking of beefy books, we also have The Black Crown by John A. Douglas. This is a fantasy novel by John, who's also a booktuber, and this one's also pretty beefy. It's like 650 pages, and this is about an orc going on an adventure, from what I understand. It's Age of Adventures is the name of the series, and looks like it'll be a lot of fun to read, so I'll get to that eventually. I promise, John, eventually. Then the author Michael R. Miller sent me his books, and it was one of his assistants, I believe, or his publicist. It was someone like that. And so the first book is Ascendant, Songs of Chaos, Book 1, which I've seen other book reviewers talk about this series, and so I'm really interested in reading it. And I've actually seen it at used bookstores before, so I'm interested in reading this series. They sent me a very nice hardcover. And good cover art. And then they also sent me these 2 novellas that are combined into one. It's The Last Stand of the Stone Fist, and then also The Huntress. So I am interested in reading this one as well. This one's really short. It's only like 200 pages, so that'll be a quick, maybe day and a half read. But I'm interested in reading that. So those are all of my self-indie pub, not related to major publishers type books that I've either read or intend to read. There's not many on the intend to read, so once I get through the intend to reads, I'll be opening it up more. If you're an author who's contacted me about reading your indie pub book, it's just that I was inundated with books, and I've got stuff with publishers going on, and I've got stuff with authors who are friends of mine, and I've got books that I just want to read, and that's the most important part of the channel is I just want to read books that I want to read. So sometimes the things that people want to send to me, it just doesn't work out. So it's not any knock against anyone who wants to write a book and wants to send it to me. That's not a knock against you. It's just what I have. So if you've read any of these books, let me know. If you're interested in any of them and want a little bit more information, let me know that as well. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.